Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of People Who Inspire. Today, we are going to talk about storytelling, and we are also going to know exactly who my guest is. We're going to know a lot more about Tosin, and we're going to also explore what are some of the ways by which we can share the stories, not just of Africa, but of our lives, of our companies, of our passions, and of our purpose. I always say that whoever determines the narrative actually predefines what posterity would remember as history. So today I'm really excited, and I have a very special friend. I've known Tosin for years, and we go way back in KN yesterday. So Tosin, how are you?
Hi.
It's really awesome to have you here. It's been a long time.
In fact, it's been how many years? It's been so many years.
Oh yeah,
So
I've
many years.
actually lost count of the number of years actually.
It's been so many years. It's been so
Yeah,
many years. But
yeah,
it's
and
actually good to be here. I am honored. I am the one who is honored. I'm like, people who inspire. Hallelujah.
it's really awesome to have you here. And for those of you watching, wherever you're watching from, today we are going to look at the power of storytelling. And as I always do, we try to get to know our guests. So in the first part of our conversation, Tosin is going to tell us a little bit about herself, where she grew up, how many siblings she has, and the various milestones that has brought her to this very point. So, Tosin, can you share a bit with us? Who is Tosin?
Very
It's
huge
a big
question.
question. A big question, a multi-million
Okay.
dollar question.
Who is Tosin? Well, first of all, um, as a storyteller, you are going to have to stop me when my story is getting too long. But I a few weeks ago, I was in a prayer meeting, and the question came to me: Who is Tosin? What is the first thing that you say when anyone asks you? Who are you? And after that, I eventually knew the answer to that question. And the first thing I would say is I'm a Christian. I am
Amazing.
I am a Christ follower. That's my identity. And that's what makes me me.
I
I,
love that.
I think that if you take that out of the equation, I will crumble like a pack of cards. So the first thing I'll say is I am a Christian. I am not one of the Christians who just ticks it on a box of when they ask you what's your religion. No, I follow the ways and the lifestyle of Jesus Christ, and that's who I am. So when I get that in your face first, put that in your face first, then I can move over to the less important things like,
Yeah.
okay, I am Nigerian by birth. My parents are both Yorubas. My dad was an engineer. He passed away 20 years ago in June this year. It was 20 years. I was only 15.
Oh, may he rest in peace. Oh,
Is
I think we lost Tosin. Oh, Tosin is back.
I'm
Okay.
still there. Am I here?
Yeah,
Good.
now you're
Yeah,
back. Yes.
good. So I was saying my dad was an engineer. He passed away 20 years ago. My mom, she is an educationist. She used to be a guidance counselor for a secondary school for over 30 years. I am the third of four children. I am the only girl in my house. So I am a bit of a tomboy, if you know what I mean. And in fact, I tell anybody who wants to know that I am a trained engineer, and I only
Yes, I know that.
to prove a point. I wanted to prove that I was one of the boys. So that was that's why I did engineering. And maybe for another reason, that my dad was a petroleum engineer, and the only thing I saw in the house were petroleum engineering books. I was like, wow, I don't have to buy textbooks. I have free textbooks.
Okay.
Might as well read petroleum engineering. So yeah, I am a trained petroleum engineer. I was born in Port Harcourt in Nigeria and spent most of my life in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, and went to a military secondary school. I went to a boarding school. So
Ooh.
I am very military to the core, very, very military to the core. And after secondary school, I spent 2 years at home trying to get to know my mother, because basically, as a daddy's girl that I wasn't close to my mom.
Mm.
So we never saw eye to eye. But seeing that my dad had just passed away just as I was finishing secondary school, God ordained it that I would spend 2 years at home trying to get an American visa to go to school in the US. And I
Mm.
kept getting bounced by the embassy. So I had those 2 years to spend at home where I had to spend time with my mom. And
Okay.
those 2 years were the breaking points for the both of us, where we just melted and eventually became best friends. And it was
Mm.
in those 2 years I eventually realized that, oh, the only option I have now is to school in Ghana. So I got admission to school in Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, my darling school.
Yeah.
Yes, you crack for life.
KNUST in the house.
Woo, 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 woo. So I was one of the first students who accepted to do petroleum engineering in tech. So I was one of the
Yeah.
pioneer petroleum
It was
engineering,
very new.
the
Yeah, it was
lab
a
rat.
new program.
Yes, we were the lab rats, proud lab rats. Anyways, so I spent 4 years in Ghana, the most amazing years of my life, the most transformative years of my life, from my first year to my final year. And I
Wow.
kept going back to Ghana, I think, for like 3 years right after. I was like, you know what, that's my second home. In fact, they used to call me Araba Tosin, even though I'm actually an Ajwa. I was born on Monday, but they said
Monday.
my character is an Araba. So I schooled in Ghana. I graduated in 2008, I think. Yes. And then I went back to Nigeria to do my national service. I did that in Lagos in a bank for whatever reason.
Ooh.
I spent 1 year working as a banker. And after that year, I gave myself kind of like a gap year where I was going to work with I call him a missionary because I don't know what else to call him. I was going to be the personal assistant of one Reverend Paramalam who lived in Jos, Nigeria at that time. He was the if for those who know the University Christian Association called IFES. That's
Hmm.
the bigger body that hosts the GAFESs and the
Gaffers.
NIFESs.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's
Mm.
the international umbrella, IFES. He was then the regional secretary for IFES for a good number of countries in Africa. And at that time, for anyone who knows about the Lausanne Congress, it's a congress for world evangelization. It started a few years, I think 1974. If I have my facts right, I might be wrong, but the first conference was in Lausanne, so they call it the Lausanne Congress. And that year, they were going to host another one in South Africa, in Cape Town. So that the person I was working for asked me to come and be his personal assistant and also be the administrator for the Congress. So I was going to be in charge of about 28 African countries, their
Wow.
participants for the Congress that would be held in Cape Town in 2010, October. So I moved everything, my life. I went to secluded Jos in Nigeria
Wow.
that was ravaged by a lot of, war, bad things. But I stayed
Hmm.
and I spent 1 year there and eventually went to South Africa for the conference, which was a huge success. I came back, and after a few months, I went back to Port Harcourt, Nigeria, where I got a job in the oil industry. Finally, I get to use my degree
Finally.
on something. Finally. So I worked with Baker Hughes for a bit. I was it's called measurement while drilling engineers. Basically, all I do is go offshore and work hard. So I worked as that in Nigeria for a bit, and then I got moved to Malaysia where I lived for a year and a half. And in the middle
Mm.
of my time in Malaysia, I went back to Nigeria to get married to my darling husband who lived in Aberdeen at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
Aberdeen.
Yeah.
So we both flew into Nigeria and got married, and 2 weeks
And
later
then,
back to our
oh, you
different
went to.
locations. Yeah, but we had a honeymoon of one and I think 2 years because living in Malaysia, beautiful country,
Mm.
lots of islands, lots of lovely places, and he would come and see me every 6 weeks. So it was like we're having honeymoon every
Oh,
time.
nice.
It was nice until life had to happen and I had to move. So I left beautiful Malaysia and came to Aberdeen.
Mm.
I joined him in Aberdeen in 2014 and
Okay.
continued my job. So I worked offshore in Nigeria, worked offshore in Malaysia, and worked offshore in the United Kingdom in the North Sea. My
Mm.
goodness,
Okay.
times of my life.
Wow.
Yes, I did that, and then eventually I left the job when I found I was pregnant with my first daughter. I was actually offshore on a job, and I was like, "What's
Ooh.
I was like, "Ooh, oh no, oh yes, oh no, oh yes." But that was the last time I went offshore, and I had my daughter in 2015, and eventually left the job in 2016 and never went back. So
Mm.
I have shelved engineering for a very long time now. In fact, I
Mm.
gave my husband my degree because he's also a petroleum engineering. So I said, you can have mine too.
Oh, he's also a petroleum
He's also a
engineer.
petroleum engineer. So he has my degree. I gave it to him. He can use it for
Sharon is caring. Sharon is caring.
yes, Karen is caring. So since then I have mothered my two kids. I had my son in 2017 January and just stayed at home, looked after them. And whilst I
Mm.
was at home, I started exploring every other part of me, which is really me. Every other part of me, which is really me. And you don't get to do that when you're busy doing stuff for
Yeah,
others.
like yeah.
So I
That's
spent
that's
time.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And there's a conversation I normally have, and this is like in relation to like a reference you made, also trying to get to know your mom and all that.
Mhm.
But like growing up, my guess would be that your biggest inspiration was your late dad, if I'm correct.
Yep.
Like
Yep. You got
I
that
could
right.
tell.
Yep.
Yeah, I could
Definitely.
tell.
I took he was my dad was everything. My dad was
Hmm.
everything. He was the person that I still aspire.
Hmm.
Still aspire. 20 years ago he passed on. I still aspire to be
Amazing.
to be half the man he was in every area. And no kidding. I know he's human. Yes, he had weaknesses. My dad had temper. He had a temper, which for those who know the Holy Spirit, he allowed the Holy Spirit to curb his temper. But every now and then you could see the existence of that temper
Yeah.
when he gets in a situation where it is triggered. So yes, my dad had his weaknesses, but this was a man who lived with the idea that he could be perfect. He
Hmm.
never
Hmm.
entertained the idea that he could not. So he was always striving towards perfection in everything that he did, in his walk with his God, in his job, in his art, with his children, with his wife. Now,
Mm, that's really like I recently I that's also hard. Like recently I lost a very close friend of mine, right?
mm,
And I've known him for more than 15 years. And one of the things that looking back and this like when you shared these attributes of your father, it really draws my mind to this young man, who was a very good friend, he was a brother, literally. And I think about how our lives here on earth, even after we have left, will still resonate with. I mean, what does the Bible say? Let your light so shine.
nine.
So that so shine there, I was meditating and I realized that it means degree. It didn't say let your light shine. He says, let your light so shine. So there has to be a degree to that shining, right? And that is living your life completely in the direction that God wants you to go, right? And creating that kind of impact in people's lives. I mean, I met you at KNUST and it's been years. And I still remember, and I remember when I suggested a topic, you're like, how did you know? Like, I still remember, the gifts that you possess and the areas that I saw that you functioned flawlessly. So I'm happy that you shared this, with your dad. And for those of you watching, it really behoves on us to think about the kind of legacy that we are leaving behind.
Mhm.
And so your dad inspires you, you get into petroleum engineering, you come to KNUST. Now you mentioned that it was transformative. Can you tell me, one or two reasons why you term your time in KNUST or in Ghana as transformative?
You see, I'll tell you something. When
Mm-hmm.
if you see a goldsmith or somebody who works metal, they're able to bend the iron when it's hot.
Mm.
That's the time that you can actually mold it, when it's hot. And that is its most vulnerable state. When the iron is hot, it's its most vulnerable state.
Mm.
That time of my life was my most vulnerable time. I had just
Oh,
lost my
okay.
dad. I had just lost my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I had lost my sense of direction. I had lost my idol. I had lost my hero. And I remember the day after I found out that he had passed, because he had an accident. It was sudden. He was okay. It was fine. He had an accident. It was very sudden. So the day after I found out, I went outside and I said, God, if someone like my dad, who was so close to you, like so close to you, spooky close, I'm not kidding, spooky close, and I'll tell you why I say spooky close. If my dad was so close to you, someone like that could die at the age of 49, who am I? Really? Who am I? Like, what is stopping me from just going?
Yeah.
So I know now that I know that he's in heaven, there's no doubt. I know when my
Mm.
dad is.
Mm.
And I said, this man that I loved so much, if I was going to see him again, there's only one place I have to go, and that's heaven.
Yeah.
So I'm going to chase this man to heaven. You know what? Whatever it's going to take for me to see him again, I would do it so that I can get to heaven. So that's the point where I was, very malleable. And then I went to tech. So you can see
Wow. Yeah.
I was at
The
a,
timing
and
was perfect.
it was perfect. The timing was perfect. And God planted me. The thing is, he writes, I say this, God is the greatest storyteller ever. He was the first storyteller. He is the greatest storyteller.
Mm.
And I have my best friend, Alice. We have this thing we say, we call ourselves unscripted. We say we are unscripted because we could never write the story of our lives the way God has written it. So whilst I was trying to fight for an American visa for 2 years because somebody thought my dad would have wanted me to school in the
Mm.
US,
Yeah.
it was a form of disappointment. But there was something else that he had written in my story, which was Ghana. And when I got there, he had planted me in a place where this hot iron will be molded into a vessel he will use.
Mm. I
That was
love that.
that was just it. And he made sure. I will tell you how I know he made sure. When I got to tech, my cousins, I call them my cousins. We're not really related by blood or anything, but the only way we could express ourselves was they are my cousin.
Yeah.
They were already there, and they said that they were attending the Baptist fellowship. So on the Sunday after I arrived, I told a friend of mine that, oh, my cousins attend the Baptist Fellowship, so I need to find it. So they said, oh, I know. The person said, I know where they meet. So I followed this person to one place, and I ended up in, do you know, honestly, I can't remember where we went, as in after spending 4 years. But I know we went somewhere, and I looked for my cousins. I didn't see them, and it was just a few people, and the service felt very weird. I was like, where am I? It was after the service that I realized that, oh no, I attended not BSU. I attended the Fundamental Baptist Fellowship. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, you went. Wow.
I didn't even know that there was a thing like that. So as we finished, I went to my cousin. She was like, no, that's not where we are.
Oh no.
That's not where we are. We are in Unity Hall. So find Unity Hall.
Yeah, Conti.
So even when you're going this way, the Lord is saying, hey, child, realign. This is where I want you to be. And the moment I got there, I knew that was where I was supposed to be. From the moment I got there, I knew that's where I was supposed to be. Every unit I joined and served in was where I was supposed to be. Everybody I met was who I was supposed to meet. Every single person, including you. Because the funny thing was, how did I really meet you, Prince? Was through Jervis, right? Your friend.
Jervis.
How did I meet Jervis? I met Jervis way before he came to tech.
Oh.
How? Yes, I met him the year we did BSU did Inspiropera. That
Inspiropera.
Yeah, we did Inspiropera, the very first Inspiropera. And because Jervis's older brother, Jebby, was in the choir, he asked Jervis to come play the guitar. And in the night where they were having the anointing service, this young man walks up to me on the line, because I don't even know how I ended up being one of the people to be praying for people, but I was. I was standing there, and this young man walks in front of me, and I look at him, and that was it. That was the connection between me and Jervis before he came to tech. And then by the time he came, he introduced me to you and Fritz and Joe.
Yes,
and
Fritz, Joe.
I became the fifth roommate.
You became the fifth roommate. I remember so well.
And
our fifth roommate.
You can see how the story is told. Who would have known that because I met Jervis, I was going to meet you years ago, and now we're here sitting down years later, having this conversation. It is the story that he had already written long before.
Amazing. And you know something, like you did mention that one of I remember one of my mentors, one of my spiritual mentors, he told me something years ago. I think this was probably first year, when I was in first year. He was 2 years ahead, Prophet Adam. So he said something to me one time, and he said that one of the things he struggles with is when people ask him what is his 5-year, 10-year plan. The reason being that the way he lives his life, it's like, unless God has spoken, right? He can't tell anyone that, okay, so this is my 5-year plan, 2-year plan. He says that the best he can tell you, maybe like a year from now, well, this is probably what God is telling him. But beyond that, it's just, God leading him. And that is, for me, one of the core ingredients of our lives, as far as, how God is writing our story is concerned. And you've captured that so well. And I remember also when I met you, and I think for those of you watching, why I think Tosin is amazing, because one of the things that I personally learned from you was when I got to KNUST, right? I was very much extremely antisocial, right? So when I first came to tech, and that's why I laugh. I was really, and then and that's why people like Jervis for me, are crucial to my story, like Foley, Eugene Foley, Jervis, Fritz, Joe. The reason being that, like I went to a boys' school, boarding school. Then I came to tech. I was in the all males hall. So it was safe, right?
Yeah.
Then I come and I have a roommate like Jervis, who's has a bit more of this sanguine characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like every time he has a new friend or like
Mm-hmm.
he's met someone new. And like I used to look at him like, how does this guy
You
sustain the energy? Then I get to meet Tosin, and Tosin's energy is like up there.
We're not having any of this melancholy right now.
So I had no option, right? Because I mean, we ended up being in the same ministry with Jervis worshipers, and
Yeah.
there was no option. So unknowing to me, I was building that aspect of my life because, how can you, let's say, even approach someone and talk to them about Christ if you are just in your shell somewhere, right? So that was for me also quite crucial for me. And the other thing I also learned from you is that your heart of giving. Do you know that you actually gave me like my first phone in tech, like my first durable phone? I was using some fake. You sold the phone into my life, but I'm not sure you remember. It was a Nokia. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think I'm not sure you remember, but I remember you sold a phone into my life at the time. I didn't have a phone. So I mean, for those of you watching, that's like how amazing Tosin is. And yeah, she's humble, but yeah, I'm just putting her on the spot. So Tosin, after tech, right? You've told us, how you've settled down and you have your husband and you're discovering that. Let's come to the topic, right? One thing I know about you is when we're in worshipers, you used to write songs, melodies, and I'm like, where do you get, like, because it was rare, right? And I'll hear something, Jervis would play something, and say, oh yeah, Tosin wrote it. I'm like, what? I thought this was some Hillsong, like some, wow, yeah, Tosin wrote that. So one of the gifts I know you have is your writing, right? So someone is watching this and the person is thinking, maybe I'm not good at writing, right? Or maybe how do I even put down my thoughts, right, in the first place? Can you share with us, right, how someone watching today's episode, thinking of kind of improving upon first their writing, and then we'll come to the storytelling bit soon, but first their writing abilities, like how does one go about it?
Well, I'll first tell you the story of how I started writing.
Mm.
I was in secondary school, and um, at the time in secondary school, I had this group of friends. It was a boarding school, like I said, and of course, it was a mixed boarding school. There was girls' hostel and there was boys' hostel, and in the military barracks. And I had this group of friends, four of them, so we were five. I can't even remember what we called ourselves. A party of five. Yes, we called party of five. And in and in amongst the five friends, I was this person. So there were these two that were close to each other, and there were these two that were close to each other, and then there was me. I don't know why. If in my life, that's how it is. I'm always the third middle, somewhere in the middle, just like a glue. I'm the one holding
everything. Yeah.
So there was me. And as young children or teenagers or whatever we were, we got to a point where I I didn't understand I didn't understand how the friendship circle was going to work, because these two were close to each other, these two were close, and yes, there was me, and then at a point these two would decide they will not speak to me anymore, and then these two would decide they won't speak to me anymore, and then before I know, four of them would decide they're not speaking to me anymore for
Oh
the whole
no.
term, and I'll just be there wondering, what did I do? What did I do? And it's not the one that you could come and ask and say, did I do something? And they'll be like, so I became very miserable. Became very miserable. In fact, it was in that point of misery that I started to write my thoughts. I, I I didn't see it as anything because, truth be told, I didn't have anybody to speak to. Anybody who I spoke to was either going to say something nasty back to me or judge me or whatever. The only thing or person or personality I could speak to was paper, because paper is not going to talk back to me. So I would take my pen and my paper and I would write those thoughts that I was feeling. I was writing about how I felt. So basically, I was storytelling. I was telling my paper the story of what was going on with me. And when I'm done, I would sign the weary soul.
Oh,
That was
wow.
my signature then. That was my writing signature. I would sign the weary soul. I still have loads of those poems, by the way. I have loads of them still
Wow.
there. And when I read it, I see how storytelling or writing in itself is really nothing deep. To be honest, anybody who can speak, right, can write. Because really, writing, forget the figures of speech and all those nice, nicely crafted sentences that we see in novels and all that. Just pack that in one side. The first step is just to write what you're thinking. Just write it down. As you're thinking, just write it down. Because many people are eloquent in their thoughts.
Oh.
A lot of people are more eloquent in their thoughts than they are in their speaking. Um if I want to think, or if I want to initiate my thought, I pick up my pen, because I know that as I start to put it down, my mind is firing
Yeah.
firing faster than what I would have been speaking with my mouth. So that's just the first step, to realize that writing actually is putting down your thoughts, not
Okay.
necessarily your words. It's putting
Okay.
down your
I
thoughts
thought.
on paper. That's the first step. Once you conquer that step and you make it a habit, then the next thing you need to do, if you want to grow to be, that sound seasoned writer, is to make sure you're a reader.
Okay. Okay.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
But when you read, you know more. And as you read the works of other people, you start to acquire your style.
Okay.
Because for me, when I started writing, I was pouring my thoughts in paper. Then I started reading novels, like Frank Peretti's novels. Do you know Frank Peretti? Anybody?
Yes.
Please, if you don't
Yeah.
know Frank Peretti, go get his novels. Piercing the Darkness, This Present Darkness, any one of
Yeah.
them.
This
Read
pleasant
them.
darkness. Yeah.
And I was like, this is how I want to write. So you see, I have the dough, right? I have the dough, which is my thoughts. Now, how do I want to present it into a cake for somebody to eat? That was when I read Frank Peretti. I was like, oh, I love to write like this. Or I read Liz Curtis Higgs and I'm like, wow, this woman writes like, oh my God, if I could write, this is how I want to write. But if I didn't read them, I wouldn't know. So first,
Wow.
break the barrier. Writing is just putting down your thoughts. And then to be a seasoned writer, you just need to read. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I love something you said regarding the fact that most of us are extremely eloquent in our thoughts. And that is, I think that's really something I'll take home, at least for from this session. And I've thought about, so the I know that there are various forms, or should I say mediums, by which we can express our storytelling. I know that some people do it through, let's say, writing predominantly. Others do it through other forms, like spoken word. Others do it through various forms. And from your point of view, right, what is the medium, right, that first works best for you, and what medium would you suggest, or let's say recommend, that the viewers explore? Is it on a case-to-case basis, or like how do you even identify which medium works?
For me, first of all, disclaimer, I didn't study writing or anything. I am gifted. I'm one of those people that I say I woke up like
I can confirm.
As in, I lay no claim to anything. It was God that says, okay, this is what I want you to do with your life, so take, that's it, but I could have killed it if I did not exploit. That's the thing.
Okay.
I could have killed it. And that doesn't mean it cannot be learned. It can be learned, but it's a bit easier when it's a gift, like for me, But it can also be a bit tricky when it's a gift, because you think you're like, it's a gift. The Lord dropped it in my head, so it must be all right. No, it's like a seed. You have to plant it so that it can grow and bear fruit. And what is the planting process? You have to dig. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to water. Oh my goodness, it's a lot of work. But you have to do it so that it can grow. Now, growing up in Nigeria and in the kind of home I grew up in, my dad loved music. So every weekend, we wake up on Saturday morning to classical music blasting in the speakers. That's my house. So I knew from the onset that when I have my house, music will be on constantly. Music is not on today because I'm alive.
I know.
So that was the environment that surrounded me. I grew to love and appreciate music. And the thing about music is that it excites your senses. When you listen to classical music, I don't know about every other person, but for me, I'm just taken to another realm. Like, let me just live there. That's where I am. And it's in that place where I start imagining quite a number of things. I start imagining words that will fit into this tune. That means I now started getting attracted to words. I'm a wordy. So when I'm speaking to you, I'm listening to every word that you're saying, and I am reading the words. I might not look at your facial expression, but I'm listening for your words, because that's what I will remember. So as I know that that's who I am, I tie words with music. So writing song comes
Yeah.
it's like writing a song. I wouldn't call myself a songwriter, but I write songs. You get?
You do.
That's it. But because I know that that's who I am a wordy. I remember writing a song in tech, and I gave it to a friend of mine, and he was like, "This, if I say what I'm about to say, this person will know he's the one." He was like, why are there plenty words in this song? Who's going to sing it? He just wants the Fred Hammond kind of 5 lines. They are singing the same thing. Lots of instruments, boom, 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 and let's go. I'm like, no, I'm telling a story. Yes, today I woke up and we went to school. That's where my strength is. So my strength is in words. So I would express my storytelling in words. Now, there are some people who are more visual than they see more than they hear. Those are the people that are not listening to your words. They are listening to you. They are watching your facial expression.
Wow.
So you can be saying, I love you, Prince.
And then they look at the face, they're like, well, no, I don't believe you.
How can you say you love me? Look at your face.
Yeah.
Looks like I whacked you with a pan. Why aren't you smiling? Why is your eyes not filled with butterflies? I don't understand. You don't love me because they are looking at your face. Now, those are visual storytellers.
Okay.
They are the ones that would paint with colors. They're the ones that would see a picture. You know, those people that go to a museum and they're standing in front of this and you're like, I can see the expression of the elements of the wind. And I'm like, what are you saying, brother? I don't know what you're saying. So those people they would express their storytelling in stuff like photography. Now I'm going to shoot myself in the foot because
I'm coming to that. Yes, tell us.
I do that too. Now, how my dad loved photography. My dad always had the best gadgets. The moment the camera drops, he has it. That was him. And that was another thing I took from him. So this one is just mirror reflecting mirror.
Yeah.
I just mirrored that from my dad. Because unlike me, who is my dad was very silent. If you don't mention his name and ask his opinion, he's not going to say a word. So we don't share the same personality in the sense, but I just mirrored that from my dad and started telling stories visually. And then I married a visual somebody. My husband is the same person who'll be like, I'm looking at your expression, babes. I am looking at your expression. That's what I'm looking at. You have a 50,000 expressions and I can show you all of them. That's my husband. That's why he can do stuff like what's behind me. He paints.
Wait, he painted the picture behind you?
Yes. He's currently working on that one. Are
you serious?
That's his big project right now.
Wow.
So it's almost by association. My dad, my husband. So I'm being fed by that. And that's where my photography finds expression in that. So it's finding what makes you tick. Finding actually what makes you tick. And then tell your story from that medium.
Wow. I'm still in awe that your husband did that painting. I'm still trying to. Amazing.
It's a lot more where that came from.
Yeah, I mean that's an amazing point. You know, for those of you watching, you know, like you need to discover exactly, you know, what works for you, and especially the place where you find peace and you know that you're able to find and discover yourself. So whether you're visual or you're like auditory in terms of, you know, for you it's about words, that's also perfectly fine. I mean, so there isn't a one size fits all. You need to discover. And Tosin, one of the my next question that I've been thinking about quite for some time now, right? I'll put something on the screen and my question will come from this. I know that storytelling has tremendous influence on entertainment, education, cultural preservation, and instilling moral values. Now, my question is this: I've seen, and I think I was discussing this with some friends, that we sometimes, I think, underestimate the power of media, how the movies we watch over time helps to kind of define certain worldviews that eventually influences our societies and our communities. So the less of, for example, movies you see that, for example, showcases an African delicacy like Eba, for example, right? The less you see that, the less you're likely to even crave for it. I mean, we started eating pizza because in movies, it was always shown that people were delivering pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So my question is this: it's linked to what's shown on the screen. How important is storytelling in preserving our culture, our moral values, and in educating society in general? How important? How do you see from your point of view? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Storytelling is everything. I can't even mince words. It's everything. Because basically, how did you know when Ghana got its independence? How do you know who Kwame Nkrumah is? How did you know when, you know, whatever you know, how did you know it? It was because somebody told you. Somebody passed down that information to you. Now, whether that information is true or false is left to whoever passed it on. But the information was passed to you and you ran with it. So storytelling is everything. I I always spoke about my dad to my kids, or I always speak, not even spoke. I'm always telling them stuff that happened in my house. My dad would do this, my dad would do that. And now that my mom is in the house, I'm like, this woman's gonna be jealous, but it's okay. So, but to mark his 20th year since he passed, it was in January this year when I woke up from sleep one day and I felt God telling me, tell his story. Tell his story. And my question was how? Because I know that there's a lot. When I write, I write once in a while. I haven't written that much on my blog, Alethea's Mind. But when I write by storytelling. Most of my blog posts are stories I would tell, and I write a lot about what my dad taught me. So I have those stories within me. But then I thought about the many people who met my dad who have their own stories that I don't even know. So it came to me, and the project was to reach out to as many people who knew Sam Oshunlaja and said,
Okay.
please write a compelling story, something that every time you remember it about this man, it moves you. Write and send it to me. I created an email address. I did everything, back office stuff. I did it all. And the story started pouring in.
Wow.
I can't tell you what that did for me. As in, every single time a story came and I read it, it was like my dad was standing in front of me.
Amazing.
Because it's one thing to think your dad is so amazing. And there's that thought in your head, you think he's amazing because he's your father. But then other people start sending you their
Other people.
stories.
Yeah.
And you're like, I wasn't crazy after all. And we compiled it into a book.
Oh, really?
So there's a book, Sam's Stories.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I can imagine that long after, and you're talking about cultural preservation. I like that word, preservation. My children might not remember everything I told them, but that book, they would always have it. If we don't tell our stories, but preserve our stories, it will be lost. Because
Wow.
our memories can only do so much. There's a lot I have forgotten. They're part of my story. Some traumatic, your mind will shift it and shelve it and lock it up. Some
Yes.
weren't so impactful, you just forgot it. Others, so impactful, they are right in front of your forehead. But you can see the compartmentalization of our memory, right? But when you store something in a book, in a written form, in a video, why I started doing devotion time with Ms.T, because I want it to be on YouTube there. Anytime somebody is looking for a story to teach their children from the Bible, they don't have to phone me and say, Tosin, please, can you remember? No, they just have to watch it. And it will be there for as long as YouTube decides to remain, So we must tell our stories. The problem with Africa is we have allowed somebody else to tell our story. And we consistently allow others tell our stories. And one of the biggest problems of Africa is our story is not heard.
Yeah.
It's not heard because we are also busy listening to other people's stories.
Yes.
Go to an average home, they are watching CNN, Fox News, Al Jazeera, an average African home. We are busy watching other people's stories and not telling our own. So anytime they decide to remember and report ours, whatever they report, take it like that. And you see, we spend so many hours being offended. Oh, how could they say that? Why didn't you say it first? Why weren't you the first to report it? Why didn't you teach your kids? We are not. That is why storytelling is everything.
Yeah, and you've I mean, it's amazing because if we, for example, you made an important allusion which I'd like to kind of reiterate. So, for example, if Tosin, you were writing a book about, let's say our interaction at KNUST, something important that just happened, that I would write that you gave me one of my first phones in the university, but you did not even remember. Exactly. So I'm happy that you did that project for Daddy. And when we look at Africa, I spoke with an architect who she's Kukua. She's doing her PhD in some historical context of the architectural forms and stuff like that. And she's archiving, investigating some archival documents in Ghana. Mm-hmm. And she told me one time that on People Who Inspire, she said that she found a written document that when the British got to the Asante Kingdom at the time, right, they were amazed by the architectural forms that existed. Like there were modern toilet facilities. But the problem is that it was, she said that I think it was only 2 authors who wrote about what they saw, because at the time, the British did not want to send a signal back to their homeland that these guys were even civilized. So they decided to portray us as primitive and people who were like living in, completely uncivilized and stuff like that. And so eventually, it is the stories they told that caught on.
Yeah.
And what actually happened has been lost.
Yes.
So I completely agree with you. I mean, it's hard time. And that's why I do, PWI series, the People Who Inspire, because the stories, that people like you and the other guests have had, the stories that I hear really, like, it inspires my viewers and it inspires me as well, right? Not only am I helping to preserve the stories of other people, but also to tell the stories as and when they are happening, So someday when, Tosin is the prime minister or the president of a country or the president of World Bank,
right.
people would look at this recording and say, "Oh yeah, I remember Tosin." Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So since we're about to wrap up, we have 4 minutes. I would quickly go to some of the comments that we've had. Okay, so let me see. If you have any questions, for those of you watching, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them through. And if you have any contributions as well, please feel free to send those contributions through. So there are a few comments. Someone said, someone says, "Oh, wow." So this was when you're sharing, about your dad and, the book getting the book together and all that, the story. So there's just a few comments. And I think my wife also said powerful. She's tuned in and watching. Yeah. So I wanted to wrap up the session by if you had any final words for people watching this, right? How, like, what would be, let's say, I know you've shared some, but what would be maybe your top two things you ask people to do, like practical things that after watching this, they should start doing, right? The short-term things they can do to start building their storytelling capabilities. So what would that be for you?
Two things. Two things. The first thing that comes to mind is Jesus. A lot of people hide their scars. Oh, I don't want you to see that part of me. I'm not going to be vulnerable in front of you. I don't want you to take advantage of me and all those blah, blah, blah things, those excuses we give to tell our stories. When Jesus rose up from the dead, what was the first thing he showed?
Wow.
You see, Jesus rose up with a resurrected body and kept his scars. And here we are trying to do plastic surgery to remove our own. Why? Why?
Wow.
Because the truth is, your scars are your trophies. They are the trophies you received to show you survived and you did not die. So why are you hiding your scars? And I'm going to be very specific about the Christian people, we Christians. We go to some churches, and I'm not picking on anybody. Don't take this the wrong way, but somebody's preaching on stage and he can't tell you a story about himself of anywhere that can connect to the sermon he's preaching, that is even vulnerable, so that I can connect with you. People connect with vulnerability. People they are not looking for superheroes with capes like Superman. They are looking for people who can, oh, so you've been through that? Wow. That's how we connect. So let's stop hiding our scars. But how can we stop hiding our scars if we don't document them? We can't show our scars if we don't document them. So the second thing is start documenting. In this era of technology where there are phones, there's everything for you. Audio, you can just press your phone and record your voice saying those things, even if you don't want to type or write. Some people don't even remember what their handwritings look like anymore. That's fine. Speak, but you have to keep record of these things, because in law, they work with precedents, right? Am I wrong? Yeah.
Yes.
If there's no record of how do they now go forward. So that's why we need to keep record. When the tax man is coming for you, he's asking you for your receipt of how you bought that thing. Keep a record of your time, your experiences, the things that you see that catch your eye. If you want to be a good writer, that's one thing. If you want to be a good speaker with lots of stories, you have to open your eyes and see anything that comes by you. So two things. Let's not hide our scars. I'm not ashamed to tell you the things I've struggled with. I write about them on my blog because there are people out there struggling with it and they don't know how to overcome. But you have overcome, but you wouldn't tell others. That's not fair. And then document those things so that posterity will remember you as a historian. Maybe one day they'll quote you, they'll say, Prince once said.
Amazing. And I love what you just talked about, the fact that and for all of you watching, don't hide your scars, and start documenting, start writing, or start recording You can record your audio, and these days there are transcription softwares, so you can even record and it will transcribe your voice into text. And so, and don't hide your scars. I think that's so important. And you said something, I think my wife also reiterated what you said. She said that your scars are your trophies, which is very, very true and very, very important. So thank you for that. And Tosin, I know that people can connect with you on your YouTube channel. Can you share how people can connect with you on social? I think Instagram and YouTube, and I'll display the names as well as you tell us.
Okay, so I currently teach Bible stories, and I don't want to say to children because honestly, anybody can watch it. So I just teach Bible stories on YouTube, and my channel is called Devotion Time with Ms.T. Honestly, nobody advised me that the channel name is not supposed to be long. So sorry, I apologize. You just have to look for it.
Yeah, no, you'll find it. I found it, so you'll find it.
Okay,
Yeah, I
good.
found.
So Devotion Time with Ms.T. Just gather your family around, because I know many times we don't have time, but how are your children going to know if they don't hear? They would not know if they don't hear. And you don't have the time to read your Bible in the morning, and you don't have time to read it because you just fall off asleep, but you have time to watch YouTube. So why don't you watch this one? Good. So
Yeah.
You could watch my devotion times. I release videos every Wednesday and Sunday. So Devotion Time with Ms.T, that's where I do my Bible stories. And my photography, where I tell my stories with photography or tell the stories of people. Basically, I do photography because I want people to see themselves through the eyes of their creator. That's why I do photography. I just want you to see what you look like through God's eyes. So that I'm on Instagram there, TIO Photos. You can follow me there. You can find me also on Facebook with all the names. My name, Tosin Iyawo Ogaga. You can find wherever you look for me, you shall find me. Or ask Prince. He'll tell you where I am.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. For sure. Thank you so much, Tosin. I know we are 4 minutes beyond the time, so I wouldn't take too much of your time, and I would like to thank you for spending, this wonderful time with us, and not only sharing your story with us, but also sharing really important nuggets. And I think that for anyone who tuned in, we've obviously learned a thing or two. So I'd like to say a big thank you, and I want to wish you a great weekend. And for those of you watching, I want to say thank you so very much. It's always a privilege to come your way with another story. And I also have a YouTube channel that you can also subscribe to. So just feel free to go to YouTube, and you can find my channel on YouTube, and you can easily decide to subscribe PeopleWhoInspire on YouTube, and you can learn a thing or two. Also, Tosin's YouTube channel, you can also visit that channel, which is Devotion Time with Ms.T on YouTube. And for her Instagram, you can do search her at TIO Photos, and you can connect with her. So thank you very much, Tosin.
Thank you so much, Prince. It was absolutely my pleasure.
I enjoyed myself, and thank you, everyone. I'll catch you again next week on People Who Inspire. Bye-bye.